into practice, and we do just a shooting drill. And Luke was just rebounding for Joe Toussaint and Patrick, and I was standing right there, and Patrick and Joe said that Luke said he felt a little sick, didn't feel great. So they told him, go sit down. We got it. So then Joe was like, hey, Brad, go check on Luke. So he's just sitting in a chair right in the middle of the practice gym. I think CJ was sitting right next to him. And so I started talking to him, like, hey, Luke, what's going on? Well, I feel a little lightheaded, kind of dizzy. Yeah. So I started asking him some questions. What did he eat? Dehydrated, blah, blah, blah. He starts to like get a little pale, says, I just don't feel very good. And then he stops answering my questions. So right about that time, my student Zoe came in and said, what's going on? So I said, hey, let's lay him down. I think he's going to faint. So we laid him down just right in the middle of the practice court, and checking his pulse, and he still had it, and he kind of started to shake a little, almost like a seizure. But after kind of watching him for a moment, this isn't your normal seizure. And then I'm checking him, he loses his pulse and stops breathing. So like, oh boy. Yeah. So fortunately, we practice this sort of thing. We've got procedures in place. It's not something you can simulate. You can't simulate this sort of thing. So so my student's always right there. I said, call 911, grab the AED. We always have an AED, a defibrillator, right at every practice, every game. So she grabbed it, was right there. And then I started hooking up the AED, told the coaches, clear the gym, get everybody out of here. And then right as I was hooking up the AED, some campus police officers were starting to walk in the gym because it was about an hour before the women's game. There was a women's game that afternoon. So they were in the building anyway. And so I hooked the AED. It does its thing where it analyzes and then says no pulse detected, deliver a shock. So I shocked him once, and then I told one of the campus police guys, grab the mask, help him with CPR. So I started doing chest compressions on him. The campus police officer did a couple of breaths. We did about 2 or 3 cycles of that, so maybe like a minute. And Luke's arm came up and pushed his mask off his face, which means he was becoming conscious. He had a pulse back. He was breathing. And then a moment after that, EMS, the paramedics were up top. They just pulled in for the girls' game. And through Zoe's call, they radioed, came down. So as they were walking in, Luke wakes up, what's going on? And so, filled him in and just keep calm. And then paramedics came, hooked up their equipment, and he was talking to us all throughout. And then after a few minutes, they transported him to UIHC where they did all the testing. And of course, Fran just canceled the rest of practice. He said we can't practice after that anyway. So Fran and Margaret and I went over and stayed with his parents. He's from Minneapolis. Fortunately, his parents were only about 45 minutes up the road. They were down here visiting, so they're almost to like Waterloo. So we called Al Seibert, called them, came around. But we got to the hospital, and he's sitting up talking, said he feels normal, and has really felt normal ever since. So crazy. He was probably without a pulse for, I'm guessing, 2 to 3 minutes. Fortunately, we had everything right there we needed, and everything worked as perfectly as you'd hope in that situation.
Wow.